Well, good afternoon, everybody. We have an absolute treat for all of you that are watching us either on Facebook Live or YouTube or on Twitter. My name is Collin O'Mara. I'm the head of the National Wildlife Federation. We're going to talk about one of the most exciting policy areas that's being debated right now in Washington, D.C., and that's the creation of the Civilian Climate Corps. This has been an idea for a long time, but it's an idea that's got incredible energy. And today we have with us three of the greatest environmental champions in the entire U.S. Congress. Senator Ed Markey, Senator Chris Coons, and Congressman Joe Neguse. These are three men that have spent tireless hours, both in every kind of part of the government, trying to make the case that this needs to be a central part of the Build Back Better strategy. And because of their leadership, we're going to be seeing tens of billions of dollars of investment in this area. We also have an amazing former Corps member from the PowerCorps in Philadelphia. That's Pedro Soto, who's going to be with us as well. We're going to learn a little bit about the work he's been doing on the ground and how his work is kind of a model for what we want to do nationally. But this is really a treat. And so it's just an honor to be with all of you. I'd like to start by talking to Senator Markey, who's obviously been one of the champions of this from the beginning, talking about huge opportunities with people back to work and resilience. And can you just talk a little bit, Senator Markey, about how the CCC can help address the kind of the emissions challenges on climate side, as well as making sure that communities are more resilient?
Well, yeah, thank you. And thank you, Collin, so much for all of your great work and for everyone. I know that Chris Coons is going to be joining us presently, and Joe Neguse, thank you for all of your great work. And again, as you were just saying, the Civilian Climate Corps is our opportunity to put hundreds of thousands of diverse young people to work on projects to address our climate crisis. This is our chance to drastically cut emissions through federally funded projects like retrofitting buildings, replacing pipes, installing energy efficient appliances, updating our grid. We can restore our forests, make our communities more climate resilient, build green stormwater management, remediate toxins and other hazardous pollution. So just a few examples. The National Park System has deferred $13 billion worth of parks maintenance. CCC members can perform that maintenance, from clearing invasive species to restoring trails to enhancing national parks' climate resilience. 53% of the 84,000 public schools in America need to replace multiple building systems. CCC members can learn and work alongside crews performing these retrofits with new, efficient, and electric equipment, green equipment. In 2019, California forests held 149 million dead trees, posing ongoing wildfire risk. And this wildfire fuel in need of clearing accumulates at a growing clip every single year. The CCC members can take up this massive task of hazardous fuels management and help to reduce this incredible set of fires that have been conflagrations that are of historic magnitude. And ultimately, there are estimates that the clean energy transition must include electrifying and installing 68 million space heaters, 63 million water heaters, 95 million cooking appliances. And again, CCC members will be part of the projects that enable these installations. And so from my perspective, I just see any number of ways in which the CCC members will be out there. They'll be creating jobs, obviously, and partnering with different federal agencies, local groups, while reducing greenhouse gases at the same time. So I just think it's a win, 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 win all around. And I'm just so proud to be partnering with everyone on this call.
I love listening to you talk about it because it's just so inspiring. And I think that the energy that's, I turn this into a movement across the country. I mean, there's so many young people that are excited. Congressman Neguse, I mean, you've been leading on this for a long time. And obviously when Senator Markey talks about the fires and floods, I mean, that's your district. And I'd love to hear some of the priorities that you have. That great bill you put together with Senator Wyden, looking at different ways to, make sure that we're working on our public lands, making sure that we're creating those opportunities for resilience and, energy, as Senator Markey said. So I'd love your priorities as we're getting into the crunch time and getting this bill done.
Well, thank you, Collin, for your work, of course, in this regard, and to my good colleague and my friend, Senator Markey, who's been just a champion for both this concept as well as many other important projects and initiatives that we know we're going to need to pursue and ultimately enact in order to move the needle in the fight against climate change, which is, as we all know, the existential threat of our time. And I thought Senator Markey did such a great job of describing the various different ways, myriad of ways in which the Climate Conservation Corps, I think, will have an impact that will inure ultimately to the benefit of every single American in our wonderful country. And of course, I am biased, as you said, towards some of the more national park system work that Senator Markey described, being that I am from the great state of Colorado, and Senator Wyden, of course, has been a champion on this front as well. But in the Rocky Mountain West and in my state, we have experienced the impacts of climate change in a really visceral way. The terrible wildfires, my district had the first and second largest wildfires in the history of Colorado, 137 years. Both happened in my congressional district 10 months ago. Both fires almost converged, literally a couple of miles away from each other. Those fires have now been followed by flash flooding on the burn scar that has tragically taken the lives of several people in my community. So we see the writing on the wall that climate change is wreaking havoc in our communities, and that is going to continue if we don't take drastic, significant, substantive action to better protect and guard our communities and to really make a difference when it comes to our emissions, as Senator Markey said. So the notion of having hundreds of thousands of folks working in our forests, doing critical reforestation work, wildfire mitigation, building out resiliency, doing wildlife habitat preservation work, deferred maintenance in our national parks. The list goes on and on. And what I am struck by, I have a community, my congressional district is over 50% public lands. Some of the best ski communities in the world happen to be in my wonderful congressional district. And I will just tell you the scale of the need in terms of these projects, right? It's mind-boggling. It really is at, I think, a scale that none of us had contemplated previously. And that's why we've been so forceful and some would say, vociferous in terms of making the case to our colleagues in the Senate and the House that the plan has to comport with that need, right? And that we've got to invest upwards of $30 billion towards the Conservation Corps, the Climate Corps, so that we can meet those challenges, and so that I can go back to my constituents, and Senator Markey can do the same, and Senator Coons as well, and tell them that they're not going to be left behind, right? That urban America and suburban America and rural America, that we're going to find a way to ensure that the 21st century reimagined CCC is in their community, helping them address their needs. Because of course, the same needs that we have in the rural parts of my district exist in different ways in urban America as well, right? When it comes to the deferred maintenance in our urban parks, for example. And finally, I would just say, and it dovetails quite well with the arrival of another leader who's been so, just has worked so incredibly hard on this issue, and that's Senator Coons. But fundamentally, at its core, the Conservation Corps, the Climate Corps, is about service, right? It's service to our country. It's marshaling the ingenuity and the skill and the talent and the passions of folks from across our country towards a common good, a common purpose, which in this case happens to be addressing the most consequential challenge of our lifetimes, right? We did it in the 1930s. The most consequential challenge then during the Great Depression was the economic disruption that they were experiencing. And the most consequential challenge facing us today is climate change, and whether or not the world that my 3-year-old daughter is going to inherit will be a livable world where she can live her dreams. So anyway, I'm very grateful to be part of this this distinguished coalition of senators like Senator Coons and Senator Markey, and of course my colleagues in the House pushing to make this happen. And I think we're going to get it done.
I feel like we're playing tennis. That was a heck of a serve. So obviously there's Senator Coons has been talking about national service since I've known him, and for more than a decade. And I think that one of the things that I get excited about the convergence of meeting the moment, right? As you said, Congressman, I mean, I think we got the 4 historic crises that President Trump talks about, but God help us, President Biden talks about. It's been that kind of day. I apologize to our listening audience. Between the pandemic, the racial reckoning, the economic need to rebuild, and obviously the climate crisis. And so, Senator Coons, I'd like to have you talk a little bit about kind of why the focus on national service, and how did that inspire you to push the Civilian Climate Corps?
Well, thank you, Collin. Thanks to Senator Markey for his great leadership on the CCC, and to Congressman Joe Neguse. It's wonderful to be on with you. And Collin, as someone who was both a leader in combating climate change and protecting our environment as a statewide official in Delaware, and now as the national leader of the National Wildlife Federation, it's great to be on with you. As you know, I helped launch one of the first national direct Americorps programs roughly 25 years ago. It was with the I Have a Dream Foundation, and I got to see up close and personal by recruiting and training and placing Americorps members who were working in inner city schools with parents, with students, with teachers, providing mentoring and tutoring. I got to see the power of national service to bring groups of people together to serve our communities and our country. And I think this is, as you both were just saying, a wonderful opportunity, an important opportunity for us to give a chance for a new generation of younger Americans to step forward and serve our nation. National service helps us bridge the divides within our country. It helps us give an opportunity to earn a college education, to learn great new skills, and to be on the forefront of one of the most urgent issues facing not just our country, but our planet. But it's also a critical opportunity for us to finally bring AmeriCorps to scale. Right now, there's about 75,000 AmeriCorps members in every single state and territory. It's a well-established program with a great infrastructure of support. When the COVID-19 pandemic broke out, AmeriCorps members were right there on the front lines, helping combat learning loss in schools, helping combat hunger in programs focused on providing food to those who are either shut in and elderly and seniors, or those who are low income, and helping redirect resources from farms where they were no longer being delivered because we had such remarkable shifts abruptly in our restaurants and our food service networks. And then third, in vaccinating and in testing and helping our public health infrastructure. So AmeriCorps has already shown its agility and its relevance in the midst of this pandemic. But now with this 21st century CCC, that is being championed by Senator Markey here in the Senate, we have an opportunity to scale up and to modernize the vision of the CCC. Back when FDR announced it, it was a dramatic nationwide initiative to address unemployment and to take a huge number of young Americans and put them to work in our public lands and our national parks. There were some shortcomings, though, in terms of equity. And this 21st century CC will pay a living wage, will do the outreach and the recruitment and the training to make sure that a culturally competent, locally recruited and placed 21st century CCC does the work in our cities, in our suburbs, and in our rural areas to make our country more climate resilient, to help with our public lands and national parks, and to address issues that we've seen in urban areas in my own hometown of Wilmington, Delaware. I'll briefly mention this example, and then we'll move on to other questions. But Southbridge is a community in Wilmington, Delaware that for decades has struggled. It has been on the receiving end. It's right next to our landfill. There was heavy industry on the other side of it. It was a poster child for environmental justice harms being imposed on Black and brown communities in our country. The basements in Southbridge flooded over and over and over, is essentially in a great big swale. And with coordination between city, county, state, nonprofit, and volunteer work in the last few years, we've managed to redirect the water flows and the sewer systems in South Wilmington in a way that now gives Southbridge a chance at a new life and new both clean water and empty basements as we are facing more and more regular storms and storms that are not 100-year storms, but 500-year storms. That's the kind of project I envision CCC doing in urban areas, and I look forward to partnering. I heard Congressman Neguse said more than half of his district is public lands. I think less than 1% of my state is public lands. We are so differently configured across our country, but CCC is an opportunity that can be configured to meet the needs of literally every district and every community in our country.
No, thank you for that. And Pedro, you got to be excited when we're talking about these kind of projects. And this is what you've been doing with PowerCorps. I mean, I'd love to hear like some of the projects you've been working on and how we can ramp up the great work you've been doing in Philadelphia.
Yes, we just like these fine gentlemen said, we've been doing a lot of work when it comes to planting a lot of trees. We've been trying to focus a lot of our energy on green stormwater infrastructure because, as you guys know, when the hurricane came to hit Philadelphia, we saw massive flooding that we have never seen before. We had complete bridgeways completely drowned underwater, people jumping into the water and swimming. This is something that if you told me the day before what would happen, I wouldn't believe you. So we're trying to find ways to tackle it from a multitude of different fronts. So we've been trying to do a lot of planning when it comes to green stormwater infrastructure, working on gardens, a lot of green spaces that not only help mitigate the water, help regulate the water flow that happens in the city, but it's also a stomping ground for the neighborhood. It becomes a jewel of the neighborhood. Just having a beautiful rain garden and a bunch of benches turns it into a communal space. People from different backgrounds will come there and appreciate it for a different aspect than just water mitigation. You know, it's not just like a gray inlet, like a big old just drain on the ground like people would pass over and completely forget. And a lot of this culture core stuff, a lot of this triple C stuff, the aspect that we really need to make sure we focus on is the people. It's the people that run it. The people are going to end up being the boots in the ground and finding a way to tie it back to the community. So the community would then be more engaged and more excited and give more attention and focus to it. So it's like a beautiful ever ending cycle where, like, I was, like, for example, myself being an Americorps member, I am an advocate for it. And that honestly pushes the envelope more to the common person than just seeing an announcement. You know, it's the people in the human aspect that really get people riled up and energized for these bigger culture, climate initiatives. So, you know, we just need more people to just be hands-on and just like, we care about this. Let's talk about this. Every opportunity we can get, spread the news, because the more new, fresh faces, new, fresh ideas we bring in, the better this project will go.
Man, your energy is infectious, man. I want to have everybody hear the work you're doing because I think it's fantastic. And you know, Senator Markey, you've talked a lot, you know, with that event you did recently with Representative Ocasio-Cortez, where you're talking about, you know, creating a national sense of purpose, and you hear that purpose in Pedro's voice, right? Doing good, right, and doing right. And I'd love to talk about why is that so important in this moment, bringing folks together through this kind of work.
Well, as we know, it's young people who are driving this effort to deal with the climate crisis and to do it right now, and to put in place the programs that can help to avoid the worst, most catastrophic consequences. And Pedro, just listening to him, he's like the face of what we're trying to do, except expand it to hundreds of thousands of young people just like him, who will be out there doing the work which they know has to be done. And that's what the CCC is going to do. It's going to provide our country with the ability to restore, to rebuild, to reimagine our economic, environmental, and societal impact. And it's our opportunity to address just so many of these intersecting crises at the very same time. We can put hundreds of thousands of young people to work on projects to save our people and our planet, all with service to combating our climate crisis at its center. And it will create a new and brighter future for millions of people through equitable and just work with livable benefits. The work these young people are going to do are going to benefit millions of others. And the CCC is just our opportunity to unify against an existential enemy, and it's our opportunity to come together in this war. And from my perspective, we have to have a movement of young people behind us who are ready to get to work to create a more just and livable future. And this incredibly historic moment requires an organization like this that has kind of the moral core of the Civil Rights Act and the kind of the vision of a moonshot, and at its center, just this discharge of our moral responsibility to solve this problem. And that's why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and I and Joe Neguse and my great partner, Chris Coons, are so excited about this program.
No, I appreciate that. And I think one of the exciting things is the inclusiveness of the vision that you're all putting forward and making sure it's truly equitable. I mean, one of the failings of the CCC, right, it was mostly men, mostly white men. There was segregation. There's very few women at the end. And look, no one's been pushing harder on making sure that it truly is that the CCC of the 21st century represents the full diversity of America. And Congressman Goose, I'd love to have you share with the crowd some of how you're thinking about making sure that becomes the reality, that it's not just words, but it's the real way that we make this a truly equitable and just opportunity for young folks to build the movement that Senator Markey was just talking about. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Of course, at least once the Zoom has to go with me being muted, so my apologies.
You're the youngest though, so there's no
yeah, exactly. I should clearly be on my game, but in any event, I couldn't agree more with Senator Markey, and I think that the difference, of course, is there was real intentionality in terms of how the various pieces of legislation that conceive of a triple C, our bill with Senator Coons, Senator Markey's bill with Alex, and then our bill with Senator Wyden, where it's really baked into the infrastructure of these programs. Because as you said, the triple C of the 1930s largely excluded Black Americans, people of color, women. I think there's no question that the triple C as a model, right, as a program, has captured the imagination of the American people. And I think that is because we see the remnants of the triple C program all around us, right? In my district, I represent an incredible musical venue called Red Rocks, which some of you may be familiar with, but it's known internationally as one of the best music venues in the world. And it's this architectural masterpiece, right? This incredible, beautiful amphitheater on the foothills of the Rockies. And it was literally built by young men who worked in the triple C in the 1930s. And you can go, as I did recently, to the camp at the base of this amphitheater and see the barracks where these folks slept, right, as they were working on this incredible project. And so when we talk about the idea, the notion that this program has worked before and it can work again, I think that is what really has sort of given this concept momentum, right? And it's kind of taken a life of its own. But all of that being said, we know that it's not the same program, right? We're not recreating the triple C of the 1930s, and it's why we call it a reimagined triple C, because we are reimagining it to comport and fit with the 21st century. And a core component of that has to be that it reflects the rich diversity of our country. And I think that's clearly one of the sort of a paradigm shift in how that program was administered 90 years ago versus, juxtaposed against how it will be implemented under a Biden administration. And again, I think you see that in the language of the bill, for example, ensuring that both the core reflects the diversity of our country and that the communities in which these projects will be implemented, right, also include communities of color. And as we know, our frontline communities, right, the poorest zip codes in the United States are the ones that are the most impacted by climate change. And so I think that has to be part and parcel to how we approach solving climate change, right, and addressing the climate crisis. And of course, that should also be something that permeates all the solutions that we propose, one of which is the Climate Conservation Corps, or the TRIP. I know all the different acronyms that we've used, but the triple C is probably the easiest way to describe it.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And all the pieces are lined up, the leadership in the legislature. I think one question that some folks still have, Senator Coons, is that can we do it? Can we get it done? And I think there's some folks that don't realize the incredible structure we have with Americorps. You've been a great champion of funding that. I'd love to have you talk a little bit about why Americorps is such an impactful program, how it's going to be a great platform to launch this kind of reimagined triple C, as Congressman Neguse just called it.
Well, absolutely, Collin. Americorps is an existing nationwide platform. There's already tens of thousands of young Americans who are being recruited, trained, and placed in every state in the country. There are conservation corps, existing statewide conservation corps all over the country, particularly concentrated in the West. We have two colleagues, Senator Heinrich, Senator Lujan, who served in the New Mexico Conservation Corps. So there's already the recruitment pipeline. There's already training capability. There's already the oversight and auditing and accountability mechanisms necessary for a very large scale program. And the current scope that's being discussed, both here in the Senate and the House, would increase it by about a third, would take us from about 75,000 to a little over 100,000 a year. That would mean over the 10-year window of the reconciliation bill, the Build Back Better bill we're debating, that you could literally add 300,000 more Americorps members. That's just a rough, there isn't a final agreed upon text, but that's just a rough figure. And I think the combination that both of my colleagues have spoken about, making sure we're paying a livable wage, making sure we're giving an education award earned through your year of service as an Americorps member that's robust, and then dramatically growing the number and skill level of the folks being recruited and trained, means we could have a quite different CCC than the one that the congressman was just describing, that yes, built all sorts of iconic pieces of our national park infrastructure, things like the Red Rocks Amphitheater and some facilities in Delaware, believe it or not. But across the whole country, we could have a remarkably trained, talented, motivated, diverse, inclusive, well-supported CCC for the 21st century because there is this existing resource. One last point, in the American Rescue Plan, which we all passed back in January, President Biden proposed and the Congress appropriated $1 billion, which was a doubling of the resources available to Americorps for this year. Part of that was to build out the infrastructure and to get ready for being able to scale up. So I think when we finally get this Build Back Better bill done, signed into law, and the funding moving, we're going to have a great infrastructure. Last point, President Biden has nominated Michael Smith, who's been the head of My Brother's Keeper, a program launched by President Obama, to be the next CEO of CNCS, the organization that supervises and runs Americorps. We'll have great leadership, a great existing 25-year nationwide infrastructure, lots of relevant experience in recruiting and training and supporting Conservation Corps, and the ability to readily scale up in a transparent and accountable way. I think this will be one of the most successful pieces of the Biden administration's legacy, and I'm thrilled to be working with such great partners as Senators Markey and Congressman Neguse to help bring this vision into reality.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. I appreciate you recognizing Michael, because I think he's going to be the exact leader we need. Now, Pedro, I want to give you the last question because you're on the ground. You're doing the real work. You know, Senator Coons just talked about that $15 minimum wage. He talked about making sure there's good benefits, making sure there's healthcare benefits, educational opportunity. How important is that? When you're trying to get folks to participate in the program, you're going back to the neighborhood and you're saying, hey, you should think about this as a next step in your career. How important are those kind of benefits and making sure that it's fair for folks?
Hugely important. Like I said, the human aspect of it is arguably one of the most important, because you won't have anything like the CCC without the people to run it, to invest their time, energy, and effort to bring people in. And honestly, in today's day and age, a lot of people are just stuck in survival mode. We're just looking on to make sure that we can secure ourselves, secure our families, and make sure that we're able to provide for those for those around us. Now, if we have a livable wage, we're able to put our time and dedication to the craft of the job. Let's focus on big picture ideas. You know, when you spend so much mental energy just trying to secure your situation, albeit maybe childcare, maybe it's housing, maybe it's food security, it takes a lot on a person. So to be able to get the best of the best and try to train the people and get them to a level where they can potentially find a career through these interests, or maybe even, you know, having these skills and using them in their off time to just, you know, volunteer for the community. In order to get to that level, they first need to be secured. And the wage is important, but also the health, insurance, very important, because a lot of young people are scared to go to the doctors because of the medical, maybe insured, may not be insured. Maybe do they have enough for the deductible? Maybe not. Those are like daily constant battles that they have to focus on. So if we want the CCC to be successful, we have to find a way to make sure everybody who's investing in this also feels like they're having that equal attention and reciprocated energy to them. So, you know, it's a two-way street. They'll give as much as we give. So the more we give, the more they'll give back.
Oh, that's fantastic. You're absolutely right. We want everyone to be able to participate because they have the opportunity to. We only have 1 minute left, but I'm going to have one last lightning round question for folks. You got a lot of folks listening right now that want to help. I'm hoping they were inspired. They stuck with us. They're really excited about this. How can they help in the next few days as we're crafting the package, as the deal's coming together? I'll turn it over to each of you maybe for a really quick answer. Senator Markey, how can folks get involved?
Okay, well, Congress is a stimulus response institution, and there's nothing more stimulating than thousands of people calling in to their congressman, to their senator, when the critical piece of legislation is on the table. So everyone that's out there, call, text, email, do whatever you can do, because this is the time, and Congress will respond if you do.
Congressman Neguse.
How could I say it any better than that? Make your voices heard and educate folks about the CCC. Tell them about what it means to you and what it will mean to your community.
Senator Coons.
Absolutely. Express support and enthusiasm. There is a very bold, very broad menu of policy initiatives that President Biden put forward in the American Family Plan, American Jobs Plan. It's been turned into the Build Back Better bill. But as we get down to the short strokes, having your voice heard here in the Senate, in the House, and at the local level, contact your state commission on national service, contact your mayor, your governor, or the nonprofits that lead great organizations such as PowerCorps that Pedro is with, to express support and enthusiasm. That'll help us get over the finish line and get into this bright next chapter in America's national service history.
Good, there you have it. So look, the decisions are made by those that show up. You just heard from three of the best conservation champions in the U.S. Congress that they need our help. There's gonna be a lot of tough decisions in the coming weeks, in coming days and weeks. Now is the time. So if you're inspired by this, if you also were a Corps member or you want to be a Corps member, like now is the time to speak up, have your voice heard, and let's make sure this is part of the big package that winds up on the president's desk in the weeks ahead. Thank you so much for joining us. To Senator Coons, Senator Markey, Congressman Neguse, to my friend Pedro, thank you for being with us, but let's get her done. Thanks, everybody.